This is the web transmission service of the Royal Canadian Military Institute. On April the 19th, we were addressed by the Chief of the Defence Staff of the Canadian Armed Forces, General Wayne Eyre. His theme was Advancing on Uncertain Ground, the Profession of Arms in a Constantly Changing World Order.
I shall now call upon the President, Mike Clary, to introduce the Chief of Defence Staff, our guest of honor. Thank you.
General Eyre, General O'Reilly, Chief Warrant Officer McCann, other distinguished visitors, members, and guests. It gives me great pleasure to introduce our speaker. General Eyre is the Vice Patron of the Royal Canadian Military Institute, and we welcome him on his first official visit as CDS and Vice Patron. It's obvious by his appointment as the Chief of the Defence Staff that he's a very capable and respected soldier. But to provide a bit more detail, not his full resume, he's a Saskatchewan farm boy who's been in uniform since he joined the Army Cadets at age 12. He attended Royal Roads and RMC and was commissioned in 1988. Since then, he's held many command or deputy command positions, including 3 PPCLI, 2 Canadian Mechanized Brigade Group, 3rd Canadian Division, and Deputy Commanding General Operations for the U.S. 18th Airborne Corps. He's served in Cyprus, Croatia, Bosnia, Afghanistan, Korea, and Ottawa. For qualifications, he's a graduate of the U.S. Army Special Forces Qualification Course, the U.S. Marine Corps Command and Staff College, the U.S. Marine Corps School of Advanced Warfighting, the U.S. Army War College. He holds a bachelor's degree, or a Bachelor of Science, and 3 master's degrees. His decorations include the Order of Military Merit in the rank of Commander, the Meritorious Service Cross, Commander-in-Chief Unit Commendation, the Chief of the Defence Staff Commendation, the Order of National Security Merit from South Korea, and was 3 times awarded the U.S. Legion of Merit, including at the rank of Commander. He's now responsible for an organization with many stresses in the realms of politics, personnel, and equipment shortages, in an unstable world with many demands on its limited resources. This evening we have a privileged opportunity to hear directly from him and to pose questions. General, the podium is yours.
Well, thanks for the introduction, Mike. You just covered the basis of my speech, so let's go to the bar. No, I do have to earn my dinner here, and it's fantastic to be at RCMI. And it's great to see so many guests here this evening. So, friends, colleagues, many of you, some of you I've known for a number of years now, some many years, so it's great to see you. It's great to be here with Chief Warrant Officer Bob McCann. 3rd full working day as our CAF Chief Warrant Officer. Yep. You know, I had to do the math there, but it was last Friday we did the transition ceremony, and so this is the first event we've traveled together as your command team for the Canadian Armed Forces. So I'd like to begin by acknowledging that we are meeting today on a traditional gathering place for many Indigenous peoples, including the Anishinaabe, the Haudenosaunee, and the Huron-Wendat. And this territory comes under Treaty 13, which was signed with the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation. So I'd like to thank you for the invitation to be here tonight. It's been a few years since I was here. I think it was, 2019, 2020. I was here as the Army Commander. And that was a fantastic time, so I'm very happy to be back. But moreover, I want to thank you for your ongoing interest in all things national defense, security related, and your support for the Canadian Armed Forces, whether you're a member of the Canadian Armed Forces, a previous member, an honorary, or a friend. Your support is vital for the work that we do each and every day here at home and around the world. And the work this institution does is important. For more than 130 years now, the Royal Canadian Military Institute has been a nexus of knowledge for the Canadian military community. Preserving that knowledge through your beautiful museum, your archives, your library. What a treasure that library is. Fantastic. I could spend days there. And sharing that through the conferences that you hold here, like the one you held earlier today, your forums, and your gatherings like this, and advancing that knowledge of our Canadian military and the challenges that we're going through publications and critical original research. So it's a pleasure to be amongst you here tonight to share a few thoughts. Thoughts about what's happening, where we're going, things that you are very passionate about. And hopefully to add my own piece to this ongoing dialogue that happens within these walls. So tonight I'd like to talk about the current state of the world, what it means for Canada, what it means for the Canadian Armed Forces, and for our profession of arms in Canada more broadly. And I'll be honest, a lot of this stuff keeps me awake at night. And talking to many of you, either over dinner or before dinner in the bar, I know I'm not the only person in this room that feels that way. But my trepidation about the future is balanced by my confidence in the people who wear this uniform. I know that the sailors, soldiers, aviators, and operators that we have within our ranks will rise to any challenge, as members of the Canadian Armed Forces always have, if we give them the training and the tools they need and the support that they desire. Correction, that they deserve. They desire it as well, but they deserve it. Now, you are a well-informed audience, and you know that we are living through times of great upheaval. Times that will test our strength and our resolve, the unity of our alliances and partnerships, and our capabilities as a nation to advance our interests in a global security environment that's nearly unprecedented in its volatility and the peril that it poses to our way of life. We, quite frankly, are at an inflection point in our history. The global security situation is in a state of deterioration. Democracy and the institutions that allow it to flourish are under attack. We are also experiencing, globally, a period of accelerated change. Now, there's a confluence of stressors in the security environment: geostrategic, climate change, accelerated technological change, societal change. And all of those are combining in ways we have yet to forecast. Now, change by itself is not necessarily good or bad, but it's always disruptive. And the disruptions we're seeing at this point in the 21st century are particularly profound, with significant implications for global security and stability, and significant implications for those of us who practice the profession of arms. In the midst of all of these disruptors, sometimes using them to their advantage, a number of authoritarian states have begun acting to increase their influence and their power on the global stage. In fact, when we survey the geopolitical security landscape, this return of great power competition is perhaps the greatest disruptor of all. Russia and China are at the fore of this effort. Their methods and their ambitions may differ, but the destabilization and the disorder they create is damaging in either case. They seek to return to a pre-democratic world where might means right and national sovereignty is assured by sheer muscle alone, where democracy and the rule of law no longer underpin the human rights or human dignity of every individual, where force, fear, and firepower determine the sanctity of borders, crush the dreams and possibilities of freedom, and shackle the destiny of nations. In Russia, Putin seeks to revive his supposed lost imperial glory, distracting his citizens from the weakness of their own state by trying to project strength abroad. He thought the conquest of Ukraine would be quick and easy. Now, thankfully, and thanks to the courage and determination of the Ukrainian people and their armed forces, he was wrong. Ukraine remains strong, but the cost has been terrible. The cost to Russia has also been immense. Putin has hurt his own people and damaged his own country, materially, economically, diplomatically, possibly beyond repair. But he will not quit. And so I believe this is going to be a long war. And we have no idea how much more damage he will do, and it's painful to contemplate that. As we go further east, China is increasingly assertive and aggressive, with aspirations to global dominance. And we've seen them trying to intimidate us, Canada, on numerous fronts. China is willing to use cyber attacks, espionage, and disinformation campaigns, and other means, as well as traditional military, diplomatic, and economic levers, even attempting to leverage its extensive diaspora of nationals in countries around the world through intimidation and threats, to impose its will and wishes on weaker nations, to subvert the rules-based international order and supplant it with a new order with Beijing at the center, return to the Middle Kingdom, if you will. And there are many watching these struggles with great interest. Authoritarian states such as North Korea and Iran, and even individuals and organizations with authoritarian leanings within more democratic states, watching to see which ways the scales will tilt and see who emerges on top. Une lutte profonde se déroule actuellement entre la liberté et le despotisme. Et il n'est pas nécessaire de plonger dans les livres d'histoire pour voir ce qui se passe lorsque les mauvais camp l'emportent. Cela signifierait la fin de l'ordre international fondé sur les règles issues de la victoire durement gagnée par nos ancêtres lors de la Seconde Guerre mondiale. This order has been the foundation of relative global security and stability, and our peace and prosperity for nearly 80 years. Now, I'm proud of the role that our Canadian Armed Forces members are playing in these challenging and often difficult times. Training Ukrainian forces under Operation Unifier, leading NATO's enhanced forward presence battle group in Latvia, and patrolling the Mediterranean as part of standing NATO Maritime Group 2, alongside France, Italy, and the United States as we speak with the HMCS Fredericton as part of Operations Reassurance. Deploying to the Indo-Pacific region as part of Operation Projection and Operation Neon. And as we speak, we've got the HMCS Montreal and the Asterix just past the Suez Canal, steaming towards the Western Pacific. And we've got a CP-140 detachment operating out of Okinawa. Deployments that are being enhanced under our country's new Indo-Pacific strategy. And serving elsewhere in the world, where they are needed and where they are called to serve. In recent weeks and months, I've had the opportunity to visit some of them around the world. And every member I met who was incredibly proud of the work they're doing. As they should be. It's important work. You can see the determination in their eyes and hear the passion in their voices when they speak about their work. Indeed, they're our best ambassadors. They know they're standing on the front lines of freedom, and some of them have told me that this is the most meaningful work that they have done in their lives, especially those who are training Ukrainians who are going straight into the fight. The people in this institution, they're good people. Our members are solid, and I, for one, am extremely proud of them. But people are only one aspect of our readiness, albeit our most important readiness, but we have to take a look at the others. Equipment, sustainment, training. And if I may do a bit of myth busting, you cannot create a military overnight. Meeting the challenges of the 21st century and beyond will require a whole-of-nation response that draws upon all aspects of national power: political, military, diplomatic, economic, and industrial. And it means we should aspire to whole-of-nation readiness. Now, I define readiness as the ability to respond to a challenge at speed, scale, and duration. Meaning it's got to be able to respond in a way that's big enough and fast enough and can be sustained for as long as necessary. And this, in particular, at the strategic level, applies to industry as well. So when that need arises, the industrial capacity to meet the challenges need to be in place, just as important as the human capacity. Everyone must be ready to contribute. And right now, within our own armed forces, our readiness is not where I'd like it to be and not where it needs to be. You know, just as our military faces some real challenges and our country faces some real challenges externally, we've got challenges within as well. And the recent years have not been kind to the Canadian Armed Forces. Years of high-tempo operations, both expeditionary deployments and increasingly frequent domestic requests for assistance. They've all taken their toll. Then came the pandemic, which pushed our tempo into overdrive and applied the same stresses against our people that the rest of our society faced. So our numbers are not nearly where they need to be. Now, there's a number of reasons for this. They include, a tough economy. We take a look at the job market out there, the labor supply, it's affecting us as well. Competition with the private sector for the best and brightest. It truly is a battle for talent. Demographic changes, specifically what young adults want and what they expect from a career. The pandemic and its effect on our ability to recruit and train. The quality of service, quality of life concerns affecting our retention. And an internal culture that needs to better represent the values we purport to defend and promote. And I'm sure there's more. But in any case, we're going to meet these challenges because meeting these challenges is what we do. It's going to take some hard work, some hard decisions, because we need to take a hard look at what we do and what we want the Canadian Armed Forces to be. We've got to provide a laser focus on the work that's required, and to do so, we've identified 4 areas of focus. And some of you have heard me talk about these before. They're all equally important, they're mutually supporting, and none will work without the other 3 being carried out in concert. The first one is reconstitution. This is all about getting our numbers back up, and we're doing this on an organization-wide scale. Tout ce que nous faisons aujourd'hui est une vue à travers le prisme de la reconstitution. Ce que nous devons faire pour reconstituer nos forces, augmenter nos effectifs et veiller à ce que notre niveau de préparation opérationnelle nous permette de répondre aux demandes qui nous sont adressées. Fundamental to this is improved recruiting and enhanced retention. The second focus area is culture. Every member must meet the expectations and live the values expressed in our recently released Canadian Armed Forces ethos, Trusted to Serve. Because every member of this institution must be able to trust that they are valued as individuals. They are part of a group, and they're able to apply their range of talents, their diverse perspectives, and their own selves to the collective effort of making our military the best it can be. And we've got to hold ourselves to the highest standards, no matter what rank we hold. And we've got to be able to attract and retain talent from all segments of this Canadian society that we're in. Canadians expect and deserve no less. The third area of focus is our operations. They're the reason we exist, our raison d'etre. To serve and defend Canadians and their interests wherever and whenever we are called upon to do so. And as we've seen recently, that demand is unrelenting. much more than the supply that we have. So everything we do, every task that we get, every ask that comes in has to be subjected to a rigorous analysis. With each possible action, we got to ask ourselves, what's the cost of doing this? What's the opportunity cost? What's the cost of not doing this? How does it fit into our national strategic values and interests? Does it align with our overall vision? And we have to find that right balance of projecting security abroad and in here at home and rebuilding ourselves through reconstitution. Because the demands on us are not going to be getting easier anytime soon. And that speaks to the fourth area of focus for armed forces, and that's continued modernization. This is critical. We cannot mortgage our future by focusing on the present, by overly focusing on the present. Our duty is to be prepared for that next fight, no matter how all-consuming the current struggle is. Now, to this end, we are continuing to pursue the initiatives and the projects that came out in our last defense policy, Strong, Secure, Engaged. We're continuing to modernize NORAD. You saw the announcement last June about the initiatives, the projects, capabilities in there. Super important for our continental defense. We're working on becoming a fully digital organization. We absolutely have to be able to respond and make decisions at the speed of relevance. And in doing so, maximize our interoperability with allies and partners. And we got to continue to enhance our capability for operational sustainment. And an important element in our modernization plans and projects is a new, and I know it touches on many here, is a new vision for that we're developing for the Reserve Force. And again, very significant here as I look at the audience here in Southern Ontario, given that many members live and train here. 14 units right now here in Toronto and 10 more within an hour's drive, traffic depending. Now, the Reserve Force of the future must be more integrated, much more integrated into our force posture and readiness. We need to view the Reserve Force more as our capabilities held in reserve. Essentially, and I've talked to a number of you about this today, it's an insurance policy for an insurance policy. And with any insurance policy, you got to pay your premiums. Now we're going to look at how reserve forces should be applied at the tactical, operational, and strategic levels. Those already engaged in full-time service, either at reserve establishments across the country or backfilling regular force positions, or serving in individual augmentees on missions abroad, that's really our tactical reserve. Primary reservists not on full-time service form the majority of our Canadian Armed Forces capacity held in reserve. And we got to consider that our operational reserve. They could be mission tasks for overseas operations, or they could be formed mission elements for domestic operations. But that is our reserve at the operational level. And this is where you can expect to find a significant effort and change to be realized and significant resources to be applied. But perhaps the biggest change that we need to look at is what we do at the strategic level with the strategic reserve. And this has to be the basis for large-scale mobilization. And something that we've relearned looking at what's happening in Ukraine is the need for a whole society to be able to mobilize your population. And our reserve units across the country become the basis for that. Now these changes, and we got to be thinking strategically here. Too many of us are stuck in the last 30 years of the unipolar moment, 1990 to, sorry, I'm going off script here. I apologize to Doug, but that unipolar moment we had from 1990 to 2020. And we are trapped in that thinking. We got to take a longer term view. Go back 100 years. Think about the large-scale mobilizations this country has had to do when we faced great power threats. Well, ladies and gentlemen, we're back in that era. So these changes are not just better for the Canadian Armed Forces, they're better for the country. And they'll also make for a better and more fulfilling and meaningful experience for our reservists. One of greater responsibility, perhaps, but also one of greater purpose. This isn't going to happen overnight. It's going to be challenging work that touches on all aspects of our planning, from doctrine to structure to capital investments, to having an industrial mobilization policy that goes hand in hand with it. But the results are going to be worth the effort. Our world is rapidly changing, and it's imperative that the Canadian Armed Forces and the practitioners of the profession of arms keep pace with those challenges. And I know we're not going to get it right, but we got to get it right enough. Now, as these changes happen, to be clear, some elements of warfare are enduring. And for anybody who's forgotten, the current war in Europe is a cruel reminder of these constants. Firstly, the nature of war is unchanging. It will always be shrouded in fear, fog, friction, uncertainty. It will always be about the application of violence. And no matter what technological advances we witness, war will always be a contest of human will, in which the human element will always be the decisive factor. Secondly, leadership, training, and motivation are the most effective weapons in any arsenal. This is why Russia's army of conscripts, of poorly trained individuals, of mercenaries and prisoners, no matter what their number, has failed to conquer Ukraine. They don't know what they're doing or why they're there. And the Ukrainians, in contrast, have got the benefit of complete clarity of purpose. Thirdly, it is fundamental in a democracy that a military force, military organization, answers and is subordinate to duly elected civilian officials who represent the will of the people. We can discuss issues, we can disagree, but at the end of the day, it's an unequal dialogue, and we are subservient to the will of the people. And we have to remember that, because that is a hallmark of military professionalism. So how do we, as professionals, those military professionals, how do we face the future? First of all, we need to embrace a new style of leadership marked by empathy, compassion, humility, and a relentless adherence to the highest ethical standards. We think about our strategic failures over the last 30 or 40 years. They were failures of character, not competence, of ethical breaches, and that's why this is so important. Secondly, as we take a look at the changing face of this country, we must embrace diversity and inclusion. 23% of this country is foreign-born. We got to attract talent from wherever it is. This is how we grow to reflect the society that we represent. The modern military demands a vast range of skill sets and talents, but also a wide range of perspectives and experiences. Third, we have to embrace new technology. The future of warfare is legacy methods of warfighting augmented by advanced technology. Hey, we're seeing this in Ukraine with legacy systems 30, 40 years old, empowered by smartphones and crowdsourcing and overhead ISR. The future is going to be about that, about C4 ISR, about signature management, about speed of decisions, human-machine pairing. And it may call upon us to think differently about how we plan, how we fight, how we organize ourselves. And that speaks to the fourth point. We must embrace innovation. This means valuing experimentation, taking risks, not being afraid to fail, accepting failure as it leads to better advances. One of my favorite philosophers, a little green guy by the name of Yoda, said failure is the greatest teacher. Or failure, the greatest teacher is, to put it in Yoda speak. And don't ask me to use his voice. So, finally, fifthly, as a profession of arms, we have to embrace lifelong learning and professional development. A day in which you don't learn something new is a day wasted. Our operating environments are becoming increasingly complex, and that means our members must be able to react quickly and effectively to the unprecedented. This requires resilience, adaptability, and creativity, traits that are honed through constant intellectual development, constant intellectual challenge. So I've covered a lot of ground here tonight, and before I wrap up, I'd just like to leave you with two things. Firstly, without a doubt, we are in an era of tremendous confrontation and change, and our security situation is deteriorating. And secondly, amid this stark reality, we must be ready relevant, and resilient. We must be ready to respond at the speed, scale, and duration required, with the capabilities that are relevant and be resilient enough to absorb the shocks of surprise and then move on to prevail. And all of this, our people are going to be central. They are proud to serve, and I am proud to serve with them. So with that, thank you. Merci beaucoup. I look forward to your questions. Unfortunately, I'm not going to be able to stay all night. Right after this, I'm getting on a flight flying to Germany as we sit down and do the Ukraine Defense Contact Group. And so the next couple of days are going to be fun. But I look forward to the discussion. Oh, yeah.
This has been another in our series of webcasts produced by the Royal Canadian Military Institute in Toronto as a public educational service. You can find news of upcoming events and links to our webcast archives at www.rcmi.org. On behalf of the RCMI, this is Eric Morse saying goodbye for now, and thank you for joining us.